This podcast is for entertainment and storytelling purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice. Some topics may be sensitive. Please listen with care and seek support if needed. Welcome back to the Because She's Adopted podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Park. If you're new here, this is the podcast where we blame everything on being adopted. Just kidding. You might recognize today's guest. I'm gonna start again. You might recognize today's guest. You can't laugh through my intro. I'm so nervous. Welcome back to the Because She's Adopted podcast. You might recognize today's guest. I like to call her the OG adoptee. She's the first person I ever heard use the word adoptee and the voice behind Adoptees on one of the first adoptee podcasts I ever listened to. An experience that changed my life. She's a fellow Canadian, a dear friend, and now my co-host on the Adoption Pop podcast. Dreams really do come true, you guys. And here today to talk about a new and very meaningful project called On Adoption. This podcast will be done in two parts. Haley will join us. Did I just give it away that Haley Radke is on the pod today? Well, Haley will be joining us for the first half, and then her team from Adoptees for Family Preservation will be here to talk some more about On Adoption. Without further ado, I'd love to welcome Haley Radke.
Thank you, Crystal. That was quite an intro.
Have you ever had an intro that good?
Never. Especially not read to my face like that. Never. Gold stars all around for you.
Thank you. I live my life trying to please Haley Radke.
I'm very hard to please, as you know.
Well, I don't even think I've talked about Adoption Pop on Because She's Adopted podcast yet.
What?
Yeah, like I think
Why
I
not?
posted I posted Elf, right? Our first episode for the month of December. But I don't actually think I made like an official announcement that I too am a co-host of the Adoption Pop podcast.
Not just that, you are the wizard behind the scenes who makes that podcast happen and appear. And you've really gotten to know me well, editing my face and voice for the last several months. So
Well, this is true. And I can see why Haley Radke does not do a video podcast, because she has no control over what her face does when reacting.
Crystal, I didn't know where that was going, and I'm glad it wasn't an insult. No, my face says what it wants to. I can't play poker. True that. And we should say our third co-host is the incredible Sullivan Summer, who is my bestie, and she is a force. She had the idea. She brought us all together. And it is a delight to get to hang out with you guys so much to talk about pop culture and critique their, do we swear on this podcast?
Yes, it's explicit.
Okay. Critique their shitty adoption takes.
So if you haven't done so yet, go over to Adoption Pop, follow us, subscribe, go on to all the socials and get on there. We have some amazing clips that we put out there that are just, the clips are my favorite because I think it really gets to show, it gets to showcase our, chemistry. That's the word. Yes. And Sullivan is a new friend to me, but like Haley said, she brought us all together and I've fallen in love with her. I have mad respect for this woman. She is smart. She's so good too. Like, she's just so good.
I know.
We love you, Sullivan.
We do.
If you're listening. And Sullivan's going to be on the second half of this podcast. So, let me start off by asking, how did you know that you loved me and wanted to be my friend? When was the first time? That was not on the script. That was right off the top of my head.
I didn't get a script, and I was warned of topical things, but well, we met in person first. We went out for dinner at my favorite Mexican restaurant local to me. And this was before I had even seen your documentary. I saw it later that weekend, and I knew I liked you from 5 minutes into our sit down at that dinner. So you made it right then.
Yes, winning. I know. I was I don't know about others, but I was very intimidated to meet the OG podcaster, adoptee podcaster, Haley Radke. I'd love to report that I lived with her in our New York City apartment, AKA our hotel room when we were in New York together. And you're literally the sweetest person I think I've ever met. Like, you're great. You have boundaries. You're strong, but you love adoptees. You love people. I literally sat with you and watched you weep for adoptees. Do you remember that?
No.
We were in our beds and you were like crying for adoptees. Like, just you're overwhelmed with the love that you have for adoptees. So it's real. What you have done here, what you've built here for adoptees, will forever go down in history. And you know, you've talked about the ripples of adoptees on, and it's just incredible. It's just incredible. You're incredible. So I love you. And my next question, unless you want to respond to that.
I do want to respond to that. Thanks for making me tear up. I do love adoptees. I think you're hyping me up too much. And what I'd like to say is, when you recorded about your New York trip, you didn't mention me one time on this show. I know. So thanks for finally bringing it up.
You want to know something else about Haley Radke? She's got a memory like an elephant. This woman will not forget a thing you've said. She will say it back to you verbatim. So don't even try and say that you didn't say something, because she'll go back and pull it up in her archived memory and be like, no, you actually said this. Yeah. It's true. And I have the memory like Dory from Finding Nemo. Okay, do you eat, sleep, and breathe adoption?
Yes, I have for the last decade. Yep, I have.
And before we go on, how do you give yourself a reprieve from it? Because I'm in it. I'm in it. I didn't know. Be careful what you ask for, people. I didn't know. And I'm grateful. I really am. I love this space. But also, how do you get a reprieve from adoption all day, every day?
My family doesn't care to talk about adoption. I have plenty of mom activities, which just means following my kids around to whichever sport they are engaged in at the time. My in real life, close to me friends here, we don't talk about adoption really. It's not every second waking moment of my days. But I'll tell you, while with adding adoption pop in, and we have to consume a lot of media, which I already consume a lot of media. I love watching TV and movies, especially scary movies. But now some of my downtime is watching adoption media. So, that was supposed to be the fun pod. No, I also have built in a lot of self-care, boundaries, as you said, things to make this sustainable, because I do have a lot of difficult conversations regularly. As you mentioned, I'm working on a new project, and those interviews in particular are very difficult for me. And so you have to, if you're going to be in advocacy, set up boundaries and healthy outlets, or you will burn out. And I have watched many of our colleagues burn out, take lengthy breaks, come back and forth. And that is totally fair and right to do. I don't know why I can do this. I kind of feel called to it. Like, my thing is, I love adoptees. I want us to have a voice. I don't ever want an adoptee to feel as alone as I did. And I'm going to use this word. I don't mean it in an ableist way, but as crazy as I did for not feeling the way everyone else thought I should about any of it. Fitting in my adoptive family, reunion failing, reunion succeeding, but being hard, any of those things. At all of those times, I felt crazy in different ways and like there was something wrong with me. I don't want anyone to feel that way. And so if I can make choices in my work life, because this is my work now, that I like record more, or I do say yes to more interviews or those kinds of things to reach more people, I have to do it. I feel compelled to do it so that I can reach that person that was me alone, feeling like they were crazy. And why is all of society telling me one thing and I'm feeling different? It's like, was there something wrong with me? No, it's not something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the system.
And so would you say that was your heart behind creating Adoptees On?
But a piece of it for sure. Yeah. I was connected with fellow adoptees on Twitter, and a couple years into reunion with my dad, we hit a rocky spot. A lot of that came when I started having kids and things got complicated, and we would talk about those things on Twitter in public, but mostly it was just adoptees talking back and forth. So I'd had some online friends there. And in the meantime, I've listened to podcasts since they were a thing. Ever since iTunes added them into the iTunes store, like we call it Apple Podcasts now, but back when it was iTunes, like I listened to so many podcasts. I became totally immersed in audio. That is totally my jam. And I had listened to 2 separate indie podcasts within a month of each other who both, this wasn't their topic, but they both put out an episode, say literally kind of talking about how they record and, you know, how their podcast came to be and those kinds of things. And I was like, I could do that. That sounds easy. I'm a tech nerd. That sounds so easy. And so I thought, I just want to see, like, are there podcasts for adoptees? And the only ones I found at the time were adoptive parent shows talking about how to adopt. And I was like, well, that's not for me. And later on, I did find I'm not the first adoptee run podcast. There were a couple before me, and like a handful. And then there was a couple that we all started just around the same time. And I thought, why don't I talk to my Twitter friends, and then I can, like, we can really go deep. You know, how much can you go deep with someone tweeting back and forth or just, you know, texting back and forth, really? But I can hear their voices and I can see them when we're recording, and I can really hear their story. And maybe someone would want to listen, but whatever, I want to hear it. And that's what started it. I did not think that a ton of people would want to listen. I thought I would get, you know, my 10 to 20 Twitter friends that maybe they would listen because, oh, I know that part. Like, that's who I thought was going to listen.
Well, I'm so glad that you followed your heart and your calling, and that you've been in this space for so many years doing this. Before we get to I want you to talk about your project that you're working on and how that came to be. But what is often a misconception about you?
Interesting. What's a misconception? I think that I'm so busy, I'll say no to interviews. For example, I actually didn't ask you if I could come on your show.
It's true.
Someone else behind the scenes was working that out.
Your people booked you.
My people.
Your people. Yeah.
So I recently had another podcaster ask me like, oh, like, I don't know, like, I know you're so busy. Like, would you come on? Like, sure. Like, people don't ask me. So now I'm saying that this year is going to be exceptionally busy. I've never been so busy. And so I may not get to say yes to those things, but often the speaking opportunities to share with our community, like, I want to do as many impactful things as I can. Personal misconception, I think people really think, and they said it to my face, people really think I hate adoptive parents. And that's not true. I critique adoptive parents, certainly, but I don't hate them personally.
You hold them to account?
I do that.
You encourage them aggressively?
I do that. And I do not stand for them in my comments. So maybe that's why people think I hate them.
Yeah.
I don't. If you're an adoptive parent, I don't want to hear from you on my Instagram, actually. So it's an adoptee space. It's for adoptees. If a first or birth parent wants to chime in, you're welcome to. But I make my show for adoptees. Adoptees On is for adoptees. Whoever else wants to listen in, that's great. But it is for adoptees.
So if someone were to ask you why, like, why do you refuse that part of the triad?
Well, I like to call it the constellation because there's so many more impacted people than just 3 parties. And they have all their own spaces. They've had their spaces for way more years than we have. We don't have protected spaces. And it's unfair that it's taken this long for us to have that. Now, there are so many more groups. There's support groups for adoptees. There are other online spaces for adoptees. But I think for us to be protected in that way feels really safe and connecting and unusual because we spend our lives, many of us might say, protecting everyone else's feelings at the cost of silencing our own. And so that's why it's important. Also, personal level, I don't want to hear your whiny BS. You picked this. We didn't pick it. So adoptive parents picked this. They probably paid money for it. And if they want to talk to other adoptive parents, go nuts. It's not my job to educate you or spend my time on you. I spend my time on adoptees, and I spend my time on talking about the impact adoption has had on relinquishing parents. That's it.
Which is a great segue into this project that you're doing. Tell me what it is and how it came to be.
On Adoption is going to be a limited series, a podcast series that is like an audio documentary. And so if you've listened to shows like This American Life or Serial or The Replacement, things like where you hear stories with experts and all of this like soundscaping, it's going to be like that. So it's not just going to be an interview show. I wanted to make something like that pretty early on in Adoptees On. In fact, I talked about it. I had my editor make me music for it. I picked the name. I bought the domain. I had a logo made. I did all the easy things. Like you might have seen a friend be like, I'm going to start a podcast, and they pick the name and they make the graphic and they post about it. And then you never hear the podcast because the hard work of making a podcast is recording it and editing it and getting it up to air. Anyway, so I had this idea all those years ago, and my children were just so tiny, and I was already carving out time to make Adoptees on literally during nap time, after bedtime. When I first got my first Patreon money, I paid a babysitter to come so I could work on my show and record. It like truly, those were the days. So bless little past Haley thinking she had the capacity during those times. And so now my kids are older. I do have more time. And so in the last couple of years, I've set up all the things. I had to make a separate business. I had to get special insurance. I set up an advisory panel of experts to help me make ethical decisions about reporting on a show like this. I started recording with birth first mothers who have relinquished children to adoption within the last 5 years. And I intentionally did that because a lot of times when we talk about adoption as adult adoptees, now in our 40s, folks who share about things in their 50s, 60s, the pushback we get when we're critiquing adoption is well-meaning people who don't understand will say, oh yeah, well, like they used to do that back in the day. Like they don't do adoption like that anymore. Now it's open. Maybe you know your biological parents when you're growing up, and like things are so they do things ethically now. So I wanted to be like, really? Because these are the experiences these mothers are having right now in 2026 when we're recording this. And so I want to show people what adoption is really like right now.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Okay. Yes.
And if you don't, if you know, this might not make it to air, but does this project have something to do with you having experienced secondary rejection from your first mother?
I mean, I've been told that. I have, a close friend, mutual friend who may have observed that about me. And I think I spent many years wondering, what is it about me that I was, first of all, available for adoption, and then second of all, in reunion, that there was something wrong with me as an adult. I was in my early 20s when I reunited with my mother for 4 months, and she cut off contact. So what was wrong with me then that you still didn't want to have a relationship? And so I spent years thinking about that. Sometimes I still feel that way. What's wrong with me? But I've done a lot of therapy surrounding that. And then over the years of talking to fellow adoptees, talking to mothers who relinquished or were forced to relinquish in the baby scoop era, I have read so many memoirs by mothers who traditionally published, self-published. I have, learned from them at conferences. I've heard interviews. I have done a deep dive. I think, yes, a driving force behind all of that research is certainly like something else is going on, right? Like there's another it's not just me, right? That she doesn't want to have a relationship with me. And I mean, ultimately, I think from all the conversations I've had with other mothers who specifically speak into my life and will say, it's not you. They will say to me, I'm thinking in particular of Leslie Pate McKinnon, who I know you're connected with. And if folks don't know her, she's been an outspoken advocate for mothers and adoptees for years and years and years. She's a therapist. And, she told me in particular, like, it's the shame, Haley. It's the shame. Whether you were forced to relinquish a child in the baby scoop era, or your parents forced you to place because you were a teenager, or you felt forced into, this is the only option for me at the time. women who don't go on to parent their babies, there is a shame that many of them feel. And then when they go on to self-identify as a birth mother, first mother, natural mother, whatever language they choose, to their friends and family or people new to them, they often are shamed then as well. And so, yes, some people will say the brave love messaging is working. Oh, you're so brave that you placed a child. A lot of people will condemn them for that. And so I think exploring that has become another mission for me. And how do I give them the voice I've worked for 10 years to give adoptees their voice? How do I give mothers that voice in telling the true experience of what it's like to place, what it's like to have fear that my promised open adoption may close if I don't do everything exactly as the adoptive parents want, if I ask for what was agreed to and isn't being followed through on. There's a lot of shame and fear wrapped up in all of it. And as my astute friends point out to me, that probably is coming from a deep personal place, in that this is now my new mission.
Well, no shade to you. I am currently working on a documentary that includes a birth mother, and I think that there's definitely some of the same flavor going on for me. I don't know if it's trying to reconcile or if it's, just I want to go into the spaces that I'm not familiar with, and I want to learn about people's perspectives so I can have a compassionate and empathetic viewpoint on what they've been through. And I think that's what you've been doing. I think that's what you're doing with this. What's the common misconception in society around birth mothers?
I think there's this dichotomy. Like, people will say, oh, that's so amazing. I'm so impressed that you chose life, chose these great parents for your child. Like, they will say those things. And they will say things like, oh, I could never do what you did. And the implication being, yikes. Right? And so this idea that we're telling them two things, we're also, from the baby scoop era, doctors would literally say to mothers while they're delivering their baby, which some of them never got to hold their babies. They literally went in, maybe were medicated, drugged, and the baby went out the other door, and they went out one door and the other baby went out the other door without their member having to hold them or getting told them, pardon me. Doctors would say, you're a slut, you're a whore, never tell anyone about this. No man will ever want to marry you if they know about this. And a lot of moms were shamed and took that secret to the grave. And now that same perspective is there. That people still put that same stigma on mothers. And then they will also say, and you're so brave, and I could never do that. Meaning, who could give a baby away? But the choice, thinking it's a choice. Yes, we have agency, but when everyone's telling you you're not good enough, you don't have the resources, your finances are in trouble, you have social poverty where your community is not there for you, what is the choice? Oh, there's this shiny website. I'll pay your medical bills. I'll pay for your doctor's appointments. I'll pay for your maternity clothes. I'll pay for your rent for a few months. You just have to give me your baby. is that a choice? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to have Sullivan and your team come on next to talk some more about this and how we can come alongside you and support this meaningful project. But is there anything else that you think needs to be said?
I really hope that our community will listen to this and share it with their friends and family. I believe when we tell our stories in just a deeply truthful way and we're able to share what really has happened to us, that empathy is built and people want to listen. They want to hear our stories. They want to know what it's like to be adopted. People are curious about that. And the women I've been interviewing are so deeply lovable and intelligent and so funny and empathetic, and they're great moms. And I want you to meet them. I want you to know what it was like for them, what it's still like for them. And we're their babies all grown up. So I want you to hear from us and what that's been like for us. I think that this series has the capacity to be of interest to so many folks. So I really hope our community embraces it and shares it with their extended networks so we can pierce the culture's idea of what adoption is and hopefully make a shift in the narrative.
Well put. Thank you, Haley, for being here with me today. Thank you for all you've done. I know that you will never be the same after doing this project and speaking with the women that you have spoken to. I cannot wait for this. I can't wait to sit in my car and listen to this podcast. And I just wish you everything good. And I wish you so much success in this. So thank you for being here with me, my friend.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I appreciate the time. I appreciate getting to talk with you about something I'm so passionate about, and I know you are too. So thank you.
All right, stay tuned. We're going to have Sullivan and the crew on and let Haley get back to all that she has to do. See you later, Haley. All right, we will move on to the second half of today's episode with the board members of Adoptees for Family Preservation. Adoptees for Family Preservation is a registered 501c3 organization that exists to raise awareness about family separation issues and the long-term impact on adoptees and their families. The organization is currently supporting the investigative podcast on adoption, produced by Haley Radke Media, Inc., a podcast exposing the unethical practices of the modern day adoption industry through the lens of adult adoptees and recent birth first mothers' experiences. Welcome, friends, and thank you for being here today.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
All right, so I'll introduce the three of you. Today, I'd like to welcome Secretary Lora Alegria, Treasurer Lilly Anspach, and last but certainly not least, President Sullivan Summer. Welcome everyone today. I'm so grateful to have you here. The first part of this episode was with our fearless leader, Haley Radke. Why don't we begin with Sullivan Summer? Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself? And for those of you who haven't noticed, Sullivan is my co-host of Adoption Pop, so it's so cool to have her on this platform here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Crystal. And it's so nice to be with you in this space. We share the other space, but it's good. It's so nice to be in your space now. So thank you so much for having us. I am Sullivan Summer. I am a domestic transracial adoptee, born and raised in the United States. And I serve as the president for Adoptees for Family Preservation. And I think other things to know about me, aside from being the president of Adoptees for Family Preservation, I am, of course, an adoptee rights advocate, naturally, and also an independent scholar, a cultural critic, and a podcaster as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Sullivan. And why don't we move to Lora?
Hi, Crystal. Thanks for having us. I'm Lora Alegria. I'm a domestic same-race adoptee. I was born and raised in Indiana, but I now live on the West Coast. Just a couple of quick notes about my story that are relevant, I think, because of the reason I want to be involved in something like AFFP is that I'm fully estranged from my adoptive family. And so I am definitely on the side of family preservation. And it also leads into the work I'm doing in the community with estrangement peer support group through AKA. And so this is something that I've been really passionate about and letting people know that they're not alone on that estrangement journey. So that is kind of the mainstay of what I'm doing in the adoptee community right now. But also I help Haley on the Adoptees On podcast, kind of behind the scenes. So
That's great. I did not know that about you, Lora. Well, thank you so much. Welcome. Lilly, how about you?
Hi, thank you for having us. My name's Lilly Anspach. I serve, like you said, as the treasurer for AFFP. I'm a domestic same-race adoptee, born and raised in Ohio, so not too far away from Lora. I came to the adoption space about a decade ago, and it's probably taken me about a decade to unravel it all. And so I feel like I'm finally finding my space and finding my footing, knowing what's important to me, having reclaimed my name and my story. I'm also estranged from my family. And so, and I also, as a professional, have worked in manufacturing for 25 years, working on systems design and systems of operational excellence. And I think that the more I learn and understand about family preservation, the more I learn and understand how maybe my professional work can actually contribute significantly in the community as we look at why does the adoption system produce the kind of outcomes it does. So I'm so excited to be here and looking forward to talking with you.
Yes, thank you so much. So it may be obvious to those of us in this community, but how do you define family preservation within the context of adoption?
I think it just means keeping our families together, right? So rather than using separation as the first, natural response, and instead focusing on how do we keep that child with that family, how do we provide resources instead of putting them in the in the pipeline of adoption, right? Like all the money that's paid for people to get children. Instead of using that money to make that transaction, we can use that money to support families and give resources.
Yeah, and I think I would add two things to what Lilly just said. And one is, I think there's a sense, not so much in our community, but maybe just outside of our community, that kids become adoptable because their mothers don't want them. When really we know from data that more often than not, it's because their mothers don't have the resources to care for them. They want to care for them. They don't have the resources to care for them. And so exactly as Lilly just said, providing mothers with more resources allow them to parent their children. We also do recognize, though, that there are some cases in which mothers, parents, even if they want to parent, are not able to do so outside of the financial. Perhaps there are mental health or substance abuse or other situations, either temporary or more permanent, where moms and dads aren't able to care for kids. And family preservation then would say, okay, let's look at who else in that family, first immediate family, extended family, that could care for the child, rather than saying, oh, mom can't take care or dad can't take care. Let's give the children to strangers.
It seems like such an obvious concept. Like, let's, and but it hasn't been, and it's not. And I think the indigenous communities have really fought for this, and which is so encouraging to be able to see that, okay, this child doesn't have to leave their community. They can, even if they're not able to connect the child with a family member, at the very least, they can keep the child within their community so they are connected to their cultural identity and traditions and all of that. Why is this project important to each one of you?
My own journey of coming into consciousness and finding my biological mother, and her being able to tell me, I wanted to keep you. I didn't have the support I needed to keep you. She tried to keep me. And then also learning about so many other birth mothers who were in the same situation, and that the industry has not changed that much from the time that I was adopted in the late 70s, and all the baby scoop era, birth mothers who were forced to give their babies away. And I think I said this on another podcast, but when I learned about open adoption as, I don't know, a teenager, something in the 90s, whenever it started, I thought very naively that this meant that was like a co-parenting thing. Like the birth mother would get to help raise their child. And then learning the truth of open adoption and the power dynamics within it, from the adoption industry being predatory still, and also the birth mothers or the adoptive parents still being in control of that situation. And realizing what adoption had done to me. It's about preventing this from happening to anyone else. So learning about family preservation and being an abolitionist, mostly for adoption. Because as Sullivan said, there are some very, very few specific circumstances where it might be necessary. But just my own journey through this and learning about how nothing has changed. And so when I look at what Haley's doing with On Adoption and wanting to raise the voices of first mothers who are still experiencing the same thing, all these years later, that we need to change. We need to change this. And we want to elevate this conversation outside of just the adoptee and first mother communities. So that's why I'm very passionate about this project and happy to be helping in any way I can.
Thank you. How about Lilly?
Yeah, so I think it's very similar in terms of personal experiences. So I shared on another podcast that my mother actually changed her mind in the delivery room and was denied the ability to hold me and didn't have any kind of explanation of her rights. So that's one piece of it. But past that, I was just sitting here thinking, the other thing that's always been so important for me is, as I've come into consciousness and as I've challenged the community that I'm in. So I came from a community that is very adoption positive, very religious. I have 5 nieces and nephews who are adopted. Unequivocally in my community, adoption is that redemption story. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And for 45 years, I choked on that story myself, right? And always felt like, the outsider telling the other story. And I always felt bad about myself. And then when I got into the adoption community and I understood everybody else had that same problem. And then when I started speaking more freely and more clearly, first to the people that I trusted and to my husband's family and in little bits and pieces. I watched as they patiently listened to me, and as I was able to make the stories not even about myself, but more relevant to them. Like, my husband's family is very mother focused. It's a very matriarchal organization. And to speak to his grandmother and his mother and say things like, well, can you imagine what that had been like? And there are kept babies in our family from unwanted pregnancies too. And so I think just from the experience of when I finally got brave, finally got my voice, and finally started having long conversations with people, I saw how powerful the change was. And I saw immediately that folks who are sometimes demonized in this community as being, the enemy, all of a sudden had a lot of compassion and a lot more understanding. And so I think for me, this narrative podcast, being able to do that at a bigger scale, right? I could just touch one or two people who are interested, and there's not a lot of people really all that interested, or ways that it comes up in your normal day-to-day. But being able to share a podcast and have people get engaged with the story and get emotionally involved and then start connecting the dots, because it's not a statistic now it's a story that they're engaged in. I think that's why I'm so interested and passionate about the project.
That's so when you said the words, the narrative that you choked on for 45 years, I'm like, yeah, I feel that. And also, I think that's a lot of why I do what I do, is the storytelling piece and making us human, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I think people just don't, they still, Sullivan, you've talked about the infantilization of adoptees as being perpetual children. No, well, look at us. There's 4 of us sitting here now. We're all grown up, and we're doing some good in this, but we're still not unaffected by family separation. Why is it important to you, Sullivan, this project?
Well, I think, there's a lot of ways to impact family preservation, and we've talked about some of them, and there are other amazing organizations out there doing really good work. I think for me, it is about the storytelling as a method of impacting family preservation. And again, it's just one method. But so I came home from the hospital to my adoptive parents' house at 3 days old. And when I was about 1 week old, my adoptive parents' best friends threw them a baby shower. And so I was at my baby shower at about a week old. And my adoptive mother made a photo album. I have the photo album. And she hand wrote under all the photographs, because of course this was 70s, so we had the print photos in the photo album. She hand wrote and captioned every single photograph, but she captioned every single photograph in my voice. And so at less than a week old, my story did not belong to me. And I think that's the way for a lot of adoptees. While I'm not a first birth mother, from what we see on TV, this group of the 4 of us knows that, those stories aren't told by first mothers and birth mothers. Those stories are told by other people. And so it's the impact of the storytelling, but also the own voice, who is getting to tell the story. And, Haley is producing this podcast, and she, of course, has the adoptee lens, but working so closely with first parents in their own voice also to tell the story, I think is so important. And so that's what made me really excited about this project.
As an adoptee and having gone into reunion, and I think some of our listeners may relate to this. There was a period of time where I really didn't look at the experience of my first mother. And, she was painted as this saint that did this saintly thing that gave my parents the greatest gift, that, a human being. And it took me a long time to even begin to understand that, wow, this was very traumatic for her. And I'm so excited about this project because I still have a lot of healing that I need to do. And my belief is that going into the trenches and hearing from the people that lived it is one of the best ways to gain understanding and compassion for somebody's experience. What do you hope for this project to do? What is the goal? What is the end goal?
I would love for it to change minds. I really would. I think, I would love for it to be one of those water cooler podcasts, right? Where people just say like, hey, have you heard this? Have you seen this? And, I was about to say people that aren't connected to adoption. I really try not to say that anymore because I actually think everybody's connected to adoption. I really do.
Yeah.
Like in certainly, immediate families or whatnot, so many extended families, so many people know an adoptee or went to school with an adoptee. But I even think about the people that, are scrolling on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, what have you, whatever social media. And the algorithm has served them up, this beautiful we're adopting story or what have you, and they heart it, they like it. And so they're engaging with, sort of, we all are guilty, I think, of blindly engaging with social media content. But so I think those people too. So I really do think everybody is connected to adoption one way, shape, or form because it's so pervasive in our society. But I would really love for people that to just it to be another one of those podcasts like whatever your favorite podcast is at the moment, you're telling your friends about it. And yeah, for me, that I would really love that.
So, again, my field of my professional life is we say all the time, if you want to change and a result, you got to change a behavior. And if you want to change an outcome, you have to change a behavior. So for me, it's you have to first have the opportunity to hear. And then maybe you'll change a behavior. Maybe you'll speak up or say something or question something or whatever. So I think that, changing minds, changing experiences, and then that's how we begin to start changing behaviors rather than knocking at the door of saying this policy needs to change or this system needs to change. You don't get there until you've got somebody's heart and mind, and that's what you can do with a story.
Yeah, thank you. For listeners who maybe don't really know much about family separation, what is the impact of mother-child separation?
We're going to need another podcast.
Right?
I think that people don't understand that, we were all sold as blank slates and we weren't. We had spent 9 months with our mothers and then we were waiting for her. We were looking for her when we were born and she wasn't there. And babies aren't blank slates. Babies know their biological mothers and that's what they need when they're born. And so the brain is rewired when that happens. When that trauma happens and that separation happens, we are immediately thrust into survival mode as babies. And a few of us on the podcast have had biological children, not all of us, but those of us who have, what your hormones felt like after you had your baby. And you couldn't imagine being separated from them. And that's what our mothers went through. And so it just starts from the beginning. The effect and the trauma is immediate and it's buried because it's pre-verbal. And then we carry that with us as babies, as we grow up into our fully grown adult selves now, we've carried that with us. And it can be hard to tap into, it can be hard to name, it can be hard to process. And also hearing the other side of that story, like we've lived it as the adopted children. And then hearing that on this podcast from the birth mother's side, talks about their lifelong shame, their lifelong trauma. I think this is anecdotal. I don't know that there are any real statistics on this, but when you hear birth mother stories, you hear that if they were young, they were teens or even early 20s, if they were forced to give their baby away, they get sort of stuck at that age emotionally, and it's hard for them to also move beyond and past that point, because it's a traumatic experience for them as well. So
when we think of birth mothers, first mothers, how they've been portrayed in media, or even to us adoptees, the way our adoptive parents spoke about our first mothers, they're either labeled as, saints or villains, and
or
both. Yeah.
Oftentimes it's both.
Exactly. And so the way that I have heard Haley talk about these women, my hope is that their dignity will be restored, that these women will become real people to the listeners.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Crystal. The humanization of first mothers and birth mothers. And I wanted to add also, as to the impact, there's brand new data that just came out this year, 2026, that shows that adopted people are 35 times more likely to attempt suicide than non-adopted people. And first and birth mothers are 37 times more likely to attempt suicide. So when we talk about, when Lora talks about the rewiring of the brain, that's just one of the ways that it manifests itself. And I think something that was super eye-opening for me, in addition to those statistics, which should, if people have never heard them before, should astound anybody. But one of the things I learned, Crystal, through the work that you and I do for the Adoption Pop podcast and looking at adoption in across media is, we did an episode recently, and it was really followed an adoptee who was born in the 1950s, but in the 1970s, with this particular person, there were psychologists already talking about these exact things that Lora just talked about in the 70s. And, that was so eye-opening for me, because I hear data now, and it's data that we in the adoptee community, we sort of know this and we hear it, but people outside the community don't seem to know it, and they seem to be skeptical of it whenever we talk about the impacts. And I think all of us maybe have a bit of a recency bias, meaning each new generation thinks that we invented the thing when really it's been around for a long time. And so as I was coming into consciousness, I was sort of like, oh, we know so much more now since I've been born in the 70s, or since the 2000s, or since the 2010s, we know more now. But to learn that psychologists knew this information in the 70s, and I'm sure before that as well, just the media I happen to be looking at was in the 70s, is just, it goes to show how much power the adoption industry has had over the narrative, which is one of the things, of course, that On Adoption, with the support of AFFP, is seeking to change.
Yeah, very, very well said. All right. So how can my listeners help? What can we do to bring this podcast to life?
You can share your resources. So we obviously are fundraising, and we have been doing that for a while now. But, a podcast of this nature takes a lot of money, a lot of production costs, a lot of expenses to make it a very professional podcast. It's a different format than what Haley's been doing before, and stepping into that next level is really important. And so finding a way to help bring that to life. I think about all the ways that we spend our money and that we vote, even, we vote with our dollar, even more so now than we even did 5 or 6 years ago. And so making a conscious choice and saying, is this important to me? And what can I give? And can I do that on a monthly basis, a recurring basis? And then past that, just sharing the information, share this podcast, be brave, don't choke on your voice. Every little time you get an opportunity to just put something out there, do that. So share this episode with your friends, share the podcast when it comes out with your friends, and that would be great.
And you can give, as Lilly said, right through our website, adopteesffp.org. There is a link there. We are a registered 501c3, so any donation you make is completely tax deductible, and no amount is too small either. Anything at all that you can give is welcome. Every little bit helps.
All right. So for listeners, thank you for being here with us today. And go over to Adoptees for Family Preservation. Follow us. Go check out their website and donate today to make this meaningful project come to life. It is going to be a incredible podcast. I know it. We know Haley. She gives everything into the work that she does, and she takes it so seriously, and it will be a resource for years to come, I believe. So thank you, Sullivan, Lora, Lilly, for being here with me today and for the work you're doing for birth first mothers and adoptees. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in. All the links will be available in our show notes. Donate today to this important cause. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on all the socials, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And we will see you next time.